go. Yeah.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Caroline, and welcome to the Audit and Corporate Services Review Committee. We're a small group this morning, but we are expecting a few members to join us a bit later. A special welcome back to Councillor Vanessa Thomas, who's joined us again after Reg's departure, sadly, from this committee. So welcome, Vanessa. You were on our committee before, so it's lovely to have you back. I think everybody else has been on a committee before, so I won't take the time to go through everybody this morning. We can see each other's faces on the screen. So without further ado, I think we've got a lot on the agenda and a committee this afternoon as well. So we better get on with it if we can, if you don't mind. So Caroline, have we received any apologies, please?
So I have an apology from Councillors Samscombe Blackhall and Councillors Clements and Alderman hope to join us later on this morning. And great. I've just this minute had a message from Mrs. Sarah Hoss.
Ah, yes.
And she's not going to make it to this morning's meeting, unfortunately.
Okay, so full apologies from Sam and Sarah then.
Sarah, yeah.
A bit later. Thanks for that, Caroline. Otherwise, we're all here, okay. So, to just receive any disclosures of interest, please, from members or officers in respect of any of the items. Anything to declare, members or officers? No, straightforward papers today, aren't they? Yeah, nothing unusual. Thank you very much. So nothing to disclose. So item 3 then, to confirm the minutes of the meeting that we held on the 28th of February. Any comments or questions or clarification first? Dr. Madeline Harvard.
Thank you, Chair Jo. As ever, a very complete and accurate set of minutes I'm very happy to propose.
Oh, thank you. Yes, they always are, in fairness, aren't they? Anything else from anybody else? Madeline's proposed. No. Okay, well, I'm happy to second chair with one correction, if you don't mind, Caroline. I think, but you won't correct me if I'm wrong, it's bottom of page 10 or page 6 of the minutes. The last paragraph before the bottom, it's got the figures in there, the 330k. And I think the next one should be 400k. I think it's got an extra note in there. Am I right? Because I am right. I'm not the best of those things. There we are. Great. If that could be corrected, so we're happy to propose and second on that basis, Madeline. Yeah, better get it right. Lovely. Thank you very much.
There's Councillor James joining us.
I thought there were a few more this morning.
Yeah, that's right.
There we are. Okay, so we've confirmed the minutes. Anything matters arising? Anything you want to ask that's not on the agenda? You want from those minutes? Anybody? Okay. Put it down, Mike. Oh, yeah, a few people coming in now. We'll keep going anyway. We'll go on to item 4, which is the action log from this meeting. Has anybody got any question or comment on those, or do you want me to just go through them individually? Nothing from anybody? Okay, morning to those who've just arrived. We're just on the action log, item 4. Okay. So if we go through them, I think some of them can be cleared, Caroline, I'm hoping, so we can get them down a bit, the action list, if we can. So the first one on the risk register is completed, isn't it? Well done, and we've got an item on that anyway, so we're well underway on that one, so we're happy to close that one. HAVS report as well, and we've got another update this time, which should reassure us there, I think, so that's completed. The audit action log. Second, do you want to say something of that one, of where we are?
Yeah, I think in terms of those actions, I think they're completed, aren't they? Because one was specific and the other one was a presentational issue. So I think they've been completed. Good.
It was just a note on the side and I wasn't entirely sure if there was a signal there was something left. So, okay, yeah, in spirit of that, then we'll close that one. There's another one I suspect when we come on to that item about columns, additional columns that has come up, isn't it, since, which is a different point. Okay, so we can close the first three. Then 967 then includes start and end dates and separate near misses from instance in the next report. I couldn't sort of see that so much in that report, but I think we tend to have different reports or different flavours of reports depending what comes up, don't we? Every time, so it's difficult to see that one's really been completed, to be honest.
To be honest, Alvon did that. I noticed he was far more comprehensive in his incident reporting this time. So there. So I'll check that that's been done. If it's done, if it has been done, we'll remove it. If not, we'll leave it on. If that makes sense.
Thank you. Because to me, it was the start and end dates bit, but he's done it quite differently in this report.
Yeah.
As near misses, they have been going after that anyway, haven't they? So that's quite substantial. So I prefer to leave that open until we really got that report as we're happy with it. Thank you. 968 then. Consider adding risks in respect of policies, etc., etc. Is that fully completed, Tegrin?
Yeah, well, I think that's been incorporated in the risk register there. So whether it follows logically through, because the style of the risk register might be different, but in terms of the action, I think it's completed.
I think so.
There.
Yeah, and it might very well be another action next time.
Yeah.
On what we've got under that item today, isn't it? But yeah, so let's close this one and possibly have fresh ones on risk. And then update on policies review, which Myra's doing for us, so that's completed. So that's great. It's nice to see them going down the actions list and perhaps some fresh ones coming in today if needs be. Thank you very much, Tegra, and everybody who's making sure that the actions are done, in fairness, after meetings. So that's great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're on to item 5 then, to receive the report of the meeting of the Health and Safety Group, which is page 15 in our pack. I don't think we've got anybody to talk to this item particularly, have we? And Adam's not here today either, just in case. But so it's just for us to note. Any comments on that Health and Safety Group? Anybody? Now's our chance to raise anything of those sort of things with the group. No. Okay. Thank you very much. Well, we'll say that we've received that then. Item 5, thank you for the note. So we're on to the substantive items from item 6 onwards, and the first one is the annual audit summary 2023 from Audit Wales. I think Tegrin, you were going to have perhaps a few comments here, and we have got Jason Blewett on the call. I'm sure you want to present key things, Jason, especially on the financial side. Non Jenkins was going to come today, members, who's new to us on the performance audit side, but not new in Audit Wales on the performance side, so will be our main contact. But unfortunately, she's poorly, so she hasn't been able to attend this morning. So Jason will try to cover what he can on any performance audits sort of questions we might have, but he might have to go away and come back to us, isn't it, depending on the nature of Jason. Okay, so annual audit summary. We've got the papers. Does anybody want to kick off, Jason or Tegrin, with comments? Jason, do you want to say a few words first?
Yeah, shall I go first, Tegrin, and then perhaps you can come in if you've got anything to add then. So yeah, this is the usual annual audit summary that we provide each year. It sets out progress against our work over the last year or so. So hopefully there shouldn't be anything new in here, but I'll just cover some of the key points. So in terms of the financial audit work, as you know, the accounts were signed off in November with an unqualified audit opinion, and we provided the report at that stage. In terms of the performance audit work, there's two aspects of that. So there's the national governance report. I think the letter notes that it was ongoing at the time of drafting, but you're probably aware that that's now been published. My understanding is that the team are hoping to come to the full authority and give a presentation and allow you to scrutinise and ask questions. So hopefully you'll be able to do that when they come. And the second bit of the performance audit work then is the local work. So that was on equality and diversity. My understanding is that the project brief was issued in October. There has been some slippage, I think, due to some resourcing issues within the performance team. That's hoping to be done by the autumn. But what I've agreed with Tegrin is that perhaps Tegrin can have a discussion with Non and the director within Audit Wales for performance to discuss the sort of timescales and any concerns that you might have. So yeah, that's probably all I'll say on the annual audit letter. I'll pass over to Tegrin if he's got anything to add, and then happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah. No, thank you, James. This is, as you said, a bit of a catch-all there. It's probably not been our easiest year with Audit Wales there, but I think I have expressed concerns because essentially I don't feel we've had any performance work this year. So there's a bit of an issue there. But as you said, we've got a plan to try and resolve that moving forward, and I take it we're still having discussions on the future audit plan, so you may well be back in the near future where we might have a bit more to say on that one at that time.
Thank you, Tegrin. I just want to support you there or reiterate the comments. So we've had a healthy opinion on our accounts. That's to be celebrated, and I think for us to note. Really pleased with that. It's important. That's your part of the house, isn't it, Jason? So that's great, and thank you for working with us on that. I know you've had your own resource constraints and issues over the last year too, isn't it, with your timelines? So that went over the line, and it was a good report. So that's good to know. But on the performance side, yes, there's quite a few deadlines and reports that have come quite late to us, and also some things we're paying for that haven't come to fruition. We're actually paying for a service that we haven't had. So I'll put this there a little bit more plainly, but Tegrin did much more diplomatically. But it is a concern for us, resourcing or not, isn't it? It's a payment for a service we haven't had. So yeah, I think that meeting is to be welcomed. That would be good. Thank you.
Yeah. Is it worth me coming back? I'll probably be back at the next committee anyway, because hopefully we'll be bringing our audit plan for next year, and perhaps myself or Non or both can give an update on what's happened since then in the discussions that Tegrin's having with the relevant director. And yeah,
that would be good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and obviously the governance report is the report that has come out recently, which is interesting reading, and that's going to a full authority. So there might be things that members want to mention now. That doesn't stop people asking anything now, isn't it, in the opportunity we've got? But obviously bearing in mind we'll have a full airing of that particular report, which I think is appropriate at an authority meeting, because it's in governance generally, isn't it, but all the parks. So members, any questions on the report from Audit Wales then, please, for Jason? Thank you. Yes, Madeleine.
You did, yeah, you did mention in your comments there just the costs, and I feel that I need to channel previous members who always raise this. Jason, obviously, we're always looking to minimize the costs, and I know that you have your standard pricings and so on, but obviously where a service hasn't been quite up to the delivery dates that we'd expected, you haven't quite been able to manage. Perhaps we're hoping that will be reviewed, and we can expect perhaps some lesser bill, but I'll just leave that comment there, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, fully understood, and I will feed it back and come back to you at the next committee with an update. Yeah,
thanks, Madeleine. Yeah. Any other questions on the report itself? No, you're going to get off likely today, Jason, I think. Ish. Thank you for attending and for offering to take Non's questions as well, but you're coming to the authority meeting to discuss the governance report anyway, so we don't duplicate too much there. I think that will be an interesting one for members. Yeah. So if there isn't anything else, members, we're going to let Jason go. You're welcome to stay, of course, but I'm sure you've got plenty on today. You don't have to stay by any means. Anything else before Jason goes? No. Okay. Thanks, Jason. Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay, thanks, members. So we'll move on then to item 12.24, which is our internal audit report. We have an update every time, and this time we've got our update from Nigel Ireland. Over to you, Nigel. We've got the papers. You can assume they've read it, I suppose, but you probably will want to take us through, because they're different papers, aren't they? Different sections. So we'll be guided by you.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes, there's 5 reports, just including our progress report. So I'll just quickly summarise that first one, which is that we are essentially on track. There are 2 reports which will come to the next committee, which will finalise the plan for 23-24, but there are 4 that are through today. Apologies that they've sort of all come through at the end of the year. That is something we're going to work on going forwards to make sure they're a bit more spread out. But essentially the plan is on track and will be completed as per the original plan agreed by the committee. So I wasn't going to say any more on that one. I'm just happy to take any questions on that one if there are any.
Any questions, members? It's quite straightforward. Yeah, thank you. And it's your first year as well, so you've obviously had to review the odd thing, and that comes out in later reports as well, which is to be expected, and it's open and transparent with you what you have and haven't done and what you've changed, which is good. No,
fantastic, thank you. Yeah, I mean, on that, I would like to say thank you to all the staff and members of the organisation who we've had to deal with. And you'll notice that in some of the audits, we do say thank you to staff. I would say that is not a standard sentence we include in our reports. It has to be earned. So really, thank you very much, because it has been a pleasurable first year in terms of getting to know the organisation. There's still a lot for us to learn, but I think we've made significant progress this year. And yeah, just thank you to the team for that. If I go on to the income generation audit, then this, which is the second audit report in the pack, this report was following on from the WAO income generation report, where they raised some recommendations in there, particularly about doing essentially a self-assessment against the process. So this review looked at how the organisation had responded to those recommendations. So pleased to be able to provide reasonable assurance. The reason it's reasonable assurance is because there is still some work ongoing within the organisation around this, particularly the development of a commercial strategy, which is planned by the organisation and was in progress, so we took that into account. But obviously, therefore, that does mean that you're not quite where you want to be in relation to income generation, hence the reasonable assurance. There was loads of good work being undertaken. The checklist that the WAO had provided had been completed in full. There was lots of good points coming out of that. The 2 recommendations we raised were around just making sure that any actions from that are clearly captured somewhere to enable monitoring. There was the potential that some of those could just slip through the net, and also just making sure that where it was those actions, or things like when the commercial strategy is developed, that it's very clear where responsibility lies in terms of monitoring that work. But other than that, a good report and lots of good progress being made. So I'm happy to take any questions on that one, Chair.
Thank you very much, Nigel, and it was an interesting read, that one. I know, having had the Audit Wales report previous years and grappled with the long checklist that we had, you remember, members. So yes, it was a decent piece of work to get through that. So yeah, it's nice that you felt you were assured with that, Nigel. So that's good. Any questions on the income generation piece? I know people are interested in this area and that we progress here. Any questions for Nigel or indeed Tegwyn on how we're doing? I'll ask a general one then. It might not be for you, Nigel. It might be or might not. It's up to you for Tegwyn Mori. How you think it's going? This is an opportunity to look generally, because I'll be honest, the observation for me is obviously with these, it does reflect on the templates we've completed or the strategies we have in place and the frameworks we have in place, which are important enablers, aren't they? So I think a couple of us as members, and speak for myself, we want to see movement here, isn't it, in terms of just being concerned about the financial settlement in the longer term and how difficult it's going to be. So income generation is so important. So yeah, just a feeling of how we're doing generally. Tegwyn, what's the picture by now when we've got our group? There's a few documents happening, as Nigel explained. What's your feeling in the current climate?
Yeah, first a comment on the audit. As I said, you're quite happy with it. It's a difficult one in one sense, because the checklist is such a long one, and I almost feel it's not one for us to do, it's one for us to refer to when things happen. So if we have an approach to income generating, we need to refer to the relevant bit of the framework. So it's a bit ongoing, isn't it?
An ongoing tool,
isn't it? Sense. So it's I think always going to be a difficult one to audit in that sense. and there. Yeah, we're fine. We've got lots of things in the air. We had a bit of money from Welsh Government at the end of the year. We've engaged a consultant who's doing some blue skies thinking for us. He's there, so he's starting that work, which will there. So he's somebody with a fairly fresh perspective on the organisation. There, obviously, at the end of the year, we had quite a bit of money coming in. You know, I always come back to, and you know, reflective of our discussion with the trust a couple of weeks ago. You know, it's less about income generating; it's more about meeting the deficit. You know, so generating 100,000 extra income and 100,000 of extra work doesn't help us at all. And actually, we're very good at that. What we're less good at is finding a way of filling the gap we find. Otherwise, we'll end up in a situation where you know, we're doing far more, but actually still struggling to deliver the core services. So that's the balance there, and I sense some of that might have to do some through cost control, as much as income generating there. So you know, so that's the balance we're grappling with, and I'm not sure what the answer is. To be perfectly honest on that one, no. I don't think we're alone in that one. So
exactly, no, absolutely. So, but the right one to recognise, I think, isn't it? You're trying to do more for less, but less for more. You know, yeah. What is being smarter, not doing more? So you're right. These grants all have work attached, don't they? So we end up doing more. Yeah, that's a very good observation. So it's one to note. I think that is the balance to be struck, isn't it? That these going after grants is good. We welcome them always, but it's actually about trying to reduce some of our work and doing it smarter. And Nigel, you've noted actually, and you in the paper, one of the earlier recommendations about smart objectives. I remember reading that, so it's all aligned, I think.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think the commercial strategy is a key bit for that, not just to say this is the income we're going to go out and get, and this is the you know, how we're going to bring all this money in. It is exactly that. It's about that balance between what are we bringing in, how are we delivering it, what's the outcomes we actually want to achieve, and that might not necessarily just be about maximizing income. It's just about actually that balance that the authority's trying to get between quality, which leads on to the value for money report, which is next, but that the quality side, income coming in, delivery, and overall outcomes for both the park itself and obviously visitors as well. So yeah, it's a more complex thing than just where's the money coming from. Absolutely.
Balancing the books and delivering the strategy in the optimum way, isn't it?
Yes,
way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and I know there's a strategy on the way there. Is that one that's going to go to the authority or the group, or how are we going to work that one, Tegrin?
Yeah, we'll probably take it through the group first, and but ultimately take it to the authority, so everybody has a say and an input into it.
Rather than here, I think it's an authority one, isn't it?
Yeah.
So one to log on the actions, then to keep an eye. It'll be an action log thing, but in any way, won't it? The audit action log generally. You've got 3 recommendations there, but I think the commercial strategy is worth having as an action to make sure that does go to the authority in good time, really. Tegrin, isn't it? Need to move on this one generally. And also to note in the minutes the thanks. I'll do it at this point just in case we forget at the end. Thanks to staff. It'd be nice to make sure we that's filtered back to everybody. Actually, it's really nice to hear that you've had a good experience, Nigel. Really pleased with that. So that's credit to everybody. Good. Okay, is that it on the income generation one? Members? Okay, thanks, Nigel. Do you want to move on to the next one, value for money?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So value for money, this is an advisory review. So again, this kind of links quite neatly with the last one, really, and what we were just saying. So this one looked at what the organisation or the authority currently had in place, what sort of similar organisations also have, but also looking a bit wider than that in terms of just general value for money, good practice, and what we have seen working effectively in terms of organisations trying to achieve value for money. And actually it can be something that organisations struggle with. So hopefully there was a good deal of useful information in here that the organisation can draw upon in looking ahead to how it approaches value for money. So it went through kind of key areas, including things like the cultural element and, what does value for money actually mean for the authority, because it is pretty much unique to every organisation. So overall, hopefully a lot of useful guidance information. There was just 2 actual recommendations, the medium priority of which is around having a value for money strategy, which is a sort of key guidance in terms of that setting the tone and driving that culture of value for money. So that was the main recommendation, and the other one linked through to procurement as well, which was the low priority. But again, hopefully a useful report for you, and we felt the organisation was in a good place looking forwards, but happy to take any questions on that report, Chair.
Yes, thank you. It was nice to have a different style. What did you call it? You had a different word for it. I liked it. It went off into other best practice and reading and yeah, nice advisory.
The report. Advisory, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Nigel. Okay, Councillor Di Clements.
Thanks, Rachel. Actually, I found this one really interesting, more than any other, I think, because value for money is so general, isn't it? And especially within our organisation, the sort of social value as well. It's very difficult to perhaps estimate or quantify. So I found this really helpful. So thank you. I don't know whether other members felt the same, but no, definitely worth doing and reading. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Di, for that feedback. It's nice to know that. So we like that discursive style and the diagrams and things like that's great. The 4 E's, including equity now and value for money. Good. Tegrin?
Yeah, I agree. To be perfectly honest, I think we put it on the list and then worked out we didn't actually have anything particularly in place for Starry to audit. So we agreed this approach. But to me, it's an interesting area of work because there is lots happening in this area. We've got obviously changes at the UK level. I think there's some legislative changes impacting on procurement coming in the next couple of months. We've got the Social Partners and Procurement Act passed by the Welsh Government or the Senedd recently, which puts requirements on it. So it is a bit of an area of work over the next couple of months of trying to re-look at our procurement side of things, both from a financial, but obviously things like decarbonisation and value for money there. So I'd assume as we work through that process, there will be a few things coming to you, which this undoubtedly is a useful bit to feed into it.
Yeah, diolch. Thank you, Tegrin. To be honest, I was on the same lines. I've got 2 questions. One was the procurement side, because whilst it's a lower level recommendation from an audit point of view, it is quite a growing area. And I mentioned the social value as well, the SME side of it for us, I think, especially in parks. And we haven't really got a full-time, well, we haven't got a full-time procurement person. So I was wondering something to take up with you again, perhaps Di and I will, on the procurement side, even if we had a boost for X amount of months, more like a consultative type person, because there's quite a lot in this space. I was thinking about the green room work as well, which is a bigger piece of procurement. And so yeah, it's interesting space, that procurement area. So perhaps wider than this particular agenda item and this recommendation, but there's something there on procurement for me. It's definitely a moving, growing area. Tegrin, do you want to come back?
Yeah, just saying we're having some consultancy support to develop the approaches on that one, as opposed to actually doing the work.
Yes.
This is one of the areas where we're not. I never feel we're big enough to justify it. Although actually, I think we've used some of Starry's support in 1 or 2 areas, because increasingly now there are frameworks becoming available that theoretically simplify this process. But if you remember the item I raised with you at the MPA a couple of months ago, when it was at the end of the financial year, where even with a framework we were struggling, it worked out in the end. But we particularly when you're giving big contracts, you've got to make sure everything is done in a fair and appropriate manner. So where needed, we're bringing in consultancy support to help develop their approach.
It is a great, and if you've got all the documentation and the approaches in place, it's an easier framework for people to use, and obviously the frameworks themselves you can draw down from as well, which is the idea. So my question was the value for money strategy, to be honest, Nigel, because having worked in this area a fair bit in my career, I'm thinking, what does a value for money strategy actually look like if I was to go to write one? And having done, I've done a lot of value for money guidance. I was involved in the 3 E's and then the 4 E's, so I am coming from a place of genuine curiosity here. Are there good examples of this? And what do you envisage? Is it more a visionary type piece of a page or two about our approach and our appetite to it and how we balance the different elements? Or is it a strategy in the conventional sense of the word, with objectives and outcomes and that sort of idea? I'd be interested if you could say a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, so Tom in the team who wrote this report, he's more of our value for money specialist. But there are some good examples out there that again we can provide certain elements of, obviously with the authorization of the other organisations. But it certainly doesn't have to be War and Peace. It's not doesn't have to be a 40-50 page document. That's not something we're after. I think you're right in what you said there as well, that there is often confusion between the difference between a value for money strategy versus something like a value for money policy, which lays out kind of the guidelines that you should be doing. For me, the strategies are always about where you're going to end up in a set period. So maybe where do you want to be in 3 years time, that sort of thing. And I think that's where something like a strategy adds more value than just a policy, because that strategy and setting those SMART targets, those objectives, those things, and you don't have to have lots of them, but linking through your cultural element, your what value means to the organization, and actually then tying that in to say, look, by the end of the 3 years, maybe something like that, you're actually saying this is where we want to be. And that might not be saying we're going to be, additional income or cutting expenditure or that sort of thing, but it might just be, overall we want satisfaction to have increased, but our costs not to have increased, and that sort of thing, and those kind of measures and ways of putting it in. But I think to a certain extent, there's very little point in our experience of having both a value for money strategy and a value for money policy. Combining those two is often quite useful. So certainly I would like to see that sort of document bringing through the cultural element, how teams should be using the strategy to help them make decisions. Procurement is obviously one key area of that, but it also comes down to things like, when you're considering new systems or changing processes or even roles within the organization, how, is there that value for money consideration as part of that? And I would generally say that there always is. It happens, but people do it subconsciously, and actually having a bit more of a framework around that to guide those decisions can help those decisions, but can also then enable you to then document that to say, do you know what, we've been achieving value for money, we just haven't been writing it down. So again, using that as a tool to help you evidence the value for money approach of the organisation across all your activities.
Lovely, thank you for that. So it's always worth teasing out what we mean by strategy and policy, and what the document might look like. So that's really helpful. And you've mentioned Tom in your team as well, and sharing. Yes. So if we could have an action to share what you can, that would be great, or any additional guidance on what you mean, that'd be fabulous, or samples. Wonderful, thank you very much. And I definitely recognise what you're saying about more the option appraisal stuff as well, Nigel, which I'd be interested in. There's something there for us in noting those down in our papers. What the different options were, how we appraised them, and then what the best value option was of those, the optimum value you're going to get, cost benefit analysis type stuff. So definitely recognise what you're saying there. Okay, have we aired this one on value for money enough? You think so? Okay, I've got a nods. Great, thank you, Nigel. So the next one is the key financial controls, purchase ledger stuff.
Thank you. So hopefully a nice quick one, really good result for the organisation, substantial assurance. So this review focused on the purchase ledger. There were a few findings just coming out of that. And again, just commenting on the really good engagement by the finance team in this as well, and obviously recognising there've been change in that team as well. So really positive result from that perspective. The medium priority recommendation on that one was around the key area of fraud prevention that we see, which is around changing bank details and just making sure that picking up the phone to a known contact at the supplier is really important, or using their details not from what you're sent but from a third party source or like from their web page, or going back to that sort of approach is really important. And we know organisations have potentially lost tens of thousands of pounds by not doing that. So it is a significant control that needs to be in place. So just making sure that was occurring, and then just a low priority, again, similar vein, but just making sure you're taking off old suppliers as well and removing those from the system, just to make sure that there's not accidental payments made to contractors with similar names that are actually old suppliers, things like that. But overall, a really positive report, but happy to take any questions.
Yes, thank you very much. Good to see a positive report and a couple of straightforward actions there, really. I don't think we need to note them here because they'll be in the audit action log anyway, won't they? So we'll take, given that they'll be transposed to there. Tegrin, you've got a question on this one or a comment?
All right, yeah, two quick comments. One, as Nigel mentioned, obviously it's a team undergoing change, so really positive that to get the substantial assurance at this time, so and there, so well done to all of them. The other bit on fraud, I think I myself were at a public leaders forum yesterday where the Auditor General gave a presentation on fraud and approaches and programs. So I think we've got some papers which we can distribute. I probably will distribute it internally, but if members of the group are interested, we can do that as well.
Lovely, thank you. That would be helpful. It's always good to keep up with the latest work in this area. Di?
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's really good news actually on this one. Just for you, Nigel, on the suggestions you said about reviewing the approved spend limits, and I've noticed we've just done that similarly in PCC. So I just wondered if there was a sort of percentage, or how would you work out what is appropriate, and how do you do that? You've got any guidance? Thanks.
Yeah, I'm going to use the normal audit get out clause here, which is the fact that it is organisation specific. It's down to your risk appetite. You need to take all that information in yourself. But obviously, what we have noted is that there are a few, well, because quite a lot of organisations actually that have just not increased these limits as inflation has gone up. So actually, some of the organisations might have existed for 10 or 15 years and they're still working to those same limits. So obviously, if you took inflation, that would equal, you could say, well, we should be putting these up sort of 40%, but we wouldn't recommend that sort of level. But again, if that's something the organisation would like advice, and where we know of organisations that have been increasing it over the periods and would like to know what sort of percentages we're talking, I can go away and find that information out and provide that if that would be useful.
Yeah, I think that would be quite helpful. Thank you.
Yeah,
definitely.
No, thank you. And there are others, I'm aware of cabinet spend control limits. I know they're for central government, but I'm thinking about WLGA as well. They're probably worth us having a good look around at lots of different levels of guidance to see what people are doing, and our own contact in the parks, obviously, which is the most common for us. So yeah, we should take that as an action forward to do a bit of research on spend limits generally. Because whilst you were saying then, Nigel, about remain within the budgetary envelope, so that is the huge challenge because the spiraling costs. It's people keep more control than ever. I know, for example, travel hasn't really recovered since pre-pandemic times in terms of the controls on travel for lots of reasons, but spend is one of them. Yeah, interesting times. Madeline, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Rachel. I was just like yourself and Tegrin and Duck, wanting to comment about how reassuring this level of assurance is. We did have in Audit Wales report last year picked up a few errors more, and we were very understanding of that, I think, because of the big changes that there've been in the department. This is a much more recent review, and although it's one part is financial controls, it's such a critical area, and I think it's highlighted how well the team have got together again, but continued their work and reviewed the activity that they have been undertaking. So to my mind, this sits very well as a sort of how we're developing in the team. So thank you, Nigel, for being able to present this, and thank you to the team for the obvious good work that's going on there. Diolch.
Thanks, Madeleine. Tegrin?
Yeah, just a quick comment on the financial standards and the limits and all of that. Yeah, it's there and fine to do it. It's one I would say because our new system puts things on a list, and therefore they appear on the list until they're done. In view of the fact that we've got a new team, we're going to have change in the payroll office for the first time for many years in the next couple of weeks. There, I'd say this is something that needs to be on the list, but not for immediate action. For action later on. By the fact that we've got substantial assurance means it's not really an issue. It's a keep an eye on this type thing as opposed to there. So as I'm very happy. As I said, it's on the list, but it's probably worth saying it's not on the list where we expect immediate action on this one, because I think getting the accounts right and embedding the new team is, I'd say, more important, especially off the back of a substantial assurance.
Yeah, thanks, Tegrin. I think there are a few actions in here that are reasonably straightforward. I think obviously they will be monitored on that log, but they're things they can start straight away in terms of that phone call to check and things like that. I'd like to see them start immediately. But the spend limits one, of course, might need a bit of review and research. So yeah, I tend to agree, put them in some sort of order. Some are quite practical. Mike, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just to say thank you, Tegrin, for that piece of information. It's very useful for us as members to appreciate what's going on within the national park, and you know, if you hadn't said that, then we wouldn't have been aware of it. So diolch yn fawr I chi, thank you.
Diolch, Mike. Okay, so in the interest of time, I think have we finished on the purchase ledger one? I see a few nods. Yeah, Bethan, Vanessa, you're happy to? Yeah, great. Okay, Nigel, on to your follow-up one.
The last one from me, you'll be pleased to hear. So the follow-up one, again, another positive result. Obviously, what this one is following up on is recommendations also from your previous provider as well. And I know you wanted to make sure that all the previous ones were captured and followed up on, so I can confirm that we did that. We had the list from them and followed up on that. So there were 15 recommendations in total that we followed up on. As you can see, a really positive result in terms of 93% of those being completed. There was one restated, which was regarding the IT strategy, and that I think was mainly a misunderstanding around the kind of the outcomes of what that recommendation was trying to achieve based on the risk. So there was work done around the digital transformation delivery plan, but not an IT strategy. So again, we've just restated that one. As you can see in the report, that was agreed. The other bit, and the reason it's reasonable assurance rather than a higher level, is about the tracking of the recommendations internally, making sure that the committee are aware on a frequent basis about how they're progressing. So again, we just raised a low priority recommendation about that, but it is important that the organisation does that monitoring to make sure that you have that awareness, and you're not just waiting until the end of the year to find out, actually, you know, suddenly a report comes through from us that says actually these recommendations aren't being completed. Obviously it's too late from a risk perspective in that regard. So again, we've just raised a recommendation about improving that tracking, but other than that, a really good result again, and happy to take any questions.
Yes, it's great to see. Thank you, Nigel. Very pleased with that, and I'm glad you picked the work up. It was something we talked about at the beginning, to have that continuity, and we were aware there were actions of lagging, and in fairness, the previous auditors had, you know, flagged that at the end of their work as well. So I'm really glad that we've tied those loose ends. There's one or two. So the IT strategy is one of them, isn't it? That's in red still, so I wouldn't mind just a response on that, bearing in mind it's one out of the 20 that are left, but it's still a really important one. So where are we on that? And the other one for me you picked up there, Nigel, was how we're tracking things, bearing in mind we've got our own audit action log, which is more about the management agreed actions that we agreed a long time, which I'm keen to continue. It's really worked well. It took a lot of work to put together, and so we want to keep that. So perhaps if we can come to agreement on how that's going to work between the various papers that we receive and how it works for yourself and for Tegrin. So we've got one what's the word? One state of the truth, one set of actions that we're all agreeing on and keeping going forward. So I sense it could drift if you're not careful. So just want to add that as well. So the ICT strategy and making sure we're all agreed on the ongoing action log and tracker, whatever we're going to do that we can see as a committee. I can see Tegrin's got his hand up. He's dying to answer those 2 questions. Thanks, Tegrin.
To be honest, we're very closely aligned because those are the 2 I was going to comment on there. So yeah, IT strategy is a work in progress. As you'll be aware, you know, I think you were presented with a few IT related documents recently as an authority. So there's been a lot of work in another team with lots of new people people in new roles, so it's very much on the way. And I was talking to Jeff recently, and she was saying, I've been sitting down doing the IT strategy, so hopefully that's on the way. To be honest, we did have a bit of a disagreement with Kerry on the monitoring there, and she decided she was right in the end. No, because
she always is, Tegrin. Believe me, I don't argue anymore.
No, it was, to be honest, I think Rachel just summed up our view in one sense, which was we felt that the log we were using was an appropriate one, and I was very keen to avoid duplication. To be fair to Kerry, I think her point was sometimes you lose the outcome by force. You know, so you know there was a healthy disagreement and back and forth. So Meyer has actually put in a measure. I would say I think our view is to monitor that for a year just to make sure we're not duplicating and creating additional work. You know, so I sense this might be a bit easier, though. Meyer has a hand up as well. There, I suppose if we have far fewer on the list, it becomes less of an issue. So actually, the other reason we're saying, well, our focus should be on clearing the list in one sense there. You know, if you've got 20 pages on the list, then it's quite a bit of work. If you've got 10 actions or 5 actions, then it's a bit of a different and there. But, you know, we've come to an accommodation and an agreement there. Worth having Myra's take on this.
Nigel and Myra, can I just capture 2 things though for Caroline for the notes? So the ICT strategy, which then we can close and go on to talk about the other thing, that you will chase that up then, Tegrin, so we can get a date on that. Do we know when that's coming? Not just this committee, I know, but just wanted to refer to another. That'd be great. We've closed that red item on that paper then, and then we're into the reporting discussion, which is how we're going to work. So Nigel had his hand up first, in fairness. So Nigel and then Myra. You're on mute though.
I pressed the button. I promise I pressed the button. Yeah, I just wanted to write. Sorry, I didn't present that finding a recommendation very clearly. And in fact, you know, just to be very clear, the organisation does track its recommendations. So you've got that audit log, and you do track those. Our point was the fact that, and again, this may be just the different ways audit providers work. All of our recommendations are raised to address a risk. They are not just points of, you know, we recommend this because we think it's the right thing to do. They're all based around a risk and addressing a risk. The management response then will check to make sure that that management response also addresses the risk, even if it may be slightly different from the recommendation we've raised. As long as it addresses the risk, we are happy. So therefore, when you're tracking those recommendations, it's really important to keep that risk, because if you then change even something slightly about how you respond to that recommendation in the future because only the management action was being tracked, you can then end up doing something which doesn't address the risk, even though you think it's the right thing to do based on your management action. So that's what we were saying. It's just about capturing that risk, because that's the really important bit that should drive the resulting activity, because that's the thing you want to manage. So we do use a very risk-based approach as opposed to other providers that maybe don't, and that's why it's so important to capture that going forwards. I just want to provide that clarification. Apologies, I don't disagree with anything Tegrin made. It was my poor presentation of that finding in the first place, so I just wanted to put that in.
That's okay. It's good. This is good. It's building excitement. It's fine. Yeah, it's the nub of the issue. You don't want to lose as wording changes, isn't it? We've got it. We understand. Myra, do you want to come in?
Yeah, so what I've done in response to this recommendation is create a spreadsheet tracker. It might not meet completely the needs of the internal auditors, but it's the best way that I can do it for our internal needs. And it's got all of the relevant columns taken from those reports provided by the internal auditors, then cross-reference with the sections that I need for your kind of the summaries to be provided for you so that we can go back and check across it. And then also checked against our performance system, which is what staff use to update their progress. So we have got it in place, and it was complicated because we've got so many historic recommendations. I would take on board what the internal auditors said about the importance of kind of looking back at recommendations and risk, just based on our experience with the Castle Tentless one, where we'd said there was a management response about buying a bigger safe, and when we reviewed that, actually it wasn't the right response on it. I think some of it is a bit about us getting staff familiar with the kind of trackers and all of those sorts of stuff. So we're really reminding them about what was the original kind of ask in terms of it. So it's a bit of learning for us, and it's still a very much a new process. So we'll have to kind of monitor, see how it goes, and kind of how it reflects for you when the internal auditors do their follow-up. So hopefully it aids them as well in the follow-up work in terms of it. So we're kind of exploring it as the process goes in terms of it.
Thanks, Maya. Appreciate it, because that is it, isn't it? The work in the background. And also hearing yours and Tegrin's appeal, we've got to get the numbers down, haven't we? We've got to get the backlog clear. I know that sounds easy for me to say from the chair, but it is obvious, isn't it? The sooner we can get that done, it's going to be far easier all around for everybody. And also, Nigel, I really appreciate this follow-up paper. If we're having this annually, I think that's really going to help with the roundup. And again, hopefully it's reporting by exception, isn't it? We're only then seeing one or two things that are struggling for whatever reason in a year would be ideal. So that's what we're aiming for. So that sounds good. So you're all working to the same cause, I think, and we'll get there. We might have to adjust it along the way. One appeal from me of learning that from past experience, I think Tegrin will, back me up on this one similarly, where sometimes the management response can be different to the recommendation, and I'm reasonably comfortable with that. My words aren't quite right, but sometimes you found something particular in audit and you must recommend based on what you found. But as a management response, you can be looking at something in a wider context. You perhaps are about to review 3 strategies, you're about to have a new member of staff, whatever, there are other things at play sometimes. And that also affects the sequencing of it, but actually what the right thing to do with that point is or not. So just want to appeal to that, where we've had that experience in the past, Tegrin, isn't it, where we end up with a tracker that's going back to an old, and that's partly why we've got the backlog now. We've got some old actions, which in honesty, because we've talked about this, Tegrin, we should have said at the time, we're not kind of accepting that when actually it was not the right one. So, I don't want to make it sound that we don't accept them normally, Nigel, but we had a few where perhaps we should have been a bit more open at the time. So as long as that allows for that flexibility when it's right, then I'm happy. I thought Tegrin would back me up. Come on, Tegrin.
Yeah, I entirely agree. And I think this discussion probably reflects the fact that we have had these discussions there. And to be honest, I know this is a degree of balance in one sense, and the number of days we commission a star is pretty low. Therefore, there is always context. I think Nigel and myself had a bit of a discussion on the income one about the where the accountability, where I think I reflected the discussions we'd had in setting the income generation group, which, to be fair to Nigel, he wouldn't have been aware, and therefore that led to a change. So irrespective of whether I'm not sure it's a winning and losing the argument there. I think those discussions have happened and been really positive, really. So.
Brilliant. So yeah, it's flexibility to get the right action, isn't it, to get at the nub of the issue that you found. So that's what we'd head in all for. So that's great. And as I say, the follow-up report is really good for that, and actually overall really reassuring that the key findings that we were trying to mop up from the last internal audit backlog is coming right. So very reassured by that. So we've got the ICT strategy action. Do we need to have an action around this tracker work and the recommendation there, or is that now sufficiently in progress? Nigel, are you assured that it's going to land okay, or do you want an action on it?
Yeah, I mean, you've got the agreed action within the report itself and the date set for that, so we're comfortable with that response. And just going back to that previous discussion as well, that conversation around the right action is absolutely part of our process, and all we want to make sure is that the risk is managed down to within your risk appetite. So again, if you tell us you're not going to do a recommendation, that is also acceptable as long as this committee agrees, because it's your risk appetite. So yeah, more than happy to have those conversations. And as Tegrin said, he and I did have that conversation regarding the income strategy, where the first recommendation we put out wasn't right, and we're happy to have that conversation and go, okay, so how are we going to do this? And you ended up with the report that was here. So yeah, more than happy with that approach.
That's great, thank you. So thank you for taking us through your 5 reports so well. Is there anything else you want to raise, Nigel, at this stage, or is that it?
Nothing from me. Thank you, Chair. Really happy and looking forward to getting the next 2 reports in, and obviously your updated plan for the forthcoming year as well to the next committee. So
great, thanks, Nigel. Hasn't the year flown? First year under your belt, excellent. Good work. Yeah, you're welcome to stay, especially the actions for the next agenda item are related. So that's, but you know, you don't have to stay for the whole. So I'll leave it to you for how long you want to stay for. Okay. Thanks very much, Nigel, and thank Kerry as well, obviously, who's not here today and done work over the year. Okay, everybody, let's move on to the next item then, which is 1324, and it's our action log for external performance audit and the internal audit so far. And it's Mair Thomas is going to take us through this. Over to you, Mair.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. So this is the action log for external performance audit and internal audit for the period ending 31st of March 2024. Please note the internal audit, following the internal audit follow-up work that we've just mentioned, some of the actions in the action log have been amended to reflect the recommendation list the internal auditors provided. So I kind of went through and just double checked it. The log does now contain a summary of the original recommendations. So in some places I have shortened them slightly just to reduce the kind of page length. And an internal audit tracker has been created with updates drawn from monitoring from monthly progress updates provided by staff and the performance reporting system. In terms of progress for high priority items, for risk maturity, a new risk management policy has been approved by MPA with a new risk register being presented to today's committee. The business continuity and IC disaster recovery actions in response to recommendations are all now complete, with plans in place with annual review schedule and section of business continuity plan to be tested each year. In terms of progress for the medium priority actions, for health and safety, the policy was presented to the March MPA. The review of risk assessments is underway, and although in March it was noted that activities around presenting lessons learned document for committee was on hold, the health and safety report for today's committee does now contain a learning from experience section, so that does partially address, I think, the kind of request for looking at lessons learned to be presented to members. For performance management, a new set of performance dashboards for 2024-25 are currently being developed for management team. For Castell Henllys, the wider asbestos management plan, policy and procedure is being developed, and all the fire logbooks have been updated, and that doesn't just apply to Castell Henllys, they've applied it across the board. A number of areas around induction, policy review have been affected by the need for HR to focus in Q4 and pay and grading review. However, wider work has commenced on the review of policies, and the development of the estate asset strategy is expected to progress in 2024 and is an action within the wider authority delivery plans, but I think the nature of that is it's quite a big piece of work, so it will take time in terms of completion. Members are requested to receive and comment on the action log.
Lovely, diolch yn fawr, Mair. Excellent overview as usual of the reds and the different bits we might have questions on. So over to you, members. What would you like to ask Mair? Di, do you want to come in first?
Yeah, thanks, Maya. And it's very visual and hits you in the face fairly quickly, doesn't it? So you can pick out the things that are really important very quickly. And I suppose the one that sort of grabs my attention, I suppose, is the safeguarding one. Yeah. So I'm just wondering, obviously, is it something perhaps we need a bit more, might be to take, I don't know, a bit more assistance, a bit more help to get this over the line or to get this started? Just wouldn't mind a comment on that. Thanks.
I Probably not, I would say. I've got, certainly when we've had internal audit of our safeguarding, it's been pretty good. I think it's one where we have a system in place. Thankfully, we don't get many instances, but that in one sense is well, good is a problem in itself in making sure everything is up to date. I think ensuring that annual reporting element closes the loop is key, and I know Graham and there we've got a safeguarding group, which is basically Graham, who's the lead, Libby, Joy, and myself, really. So we do meet, and I was talking to Graham recently in order to have another meeting in order to set that in place. We probably won't have a lot to say in the report, but I think the significance of having a report is quite important there. So but so I would be reasonably confident. So if you're happy, just to wait for the report, and then if you feel at that point, then we can do something.
Okay, I think Di, you're happy. It was the low, I think, for me, when it's low priority. We know pay grading is higher in you know, the workload of that particular team, so sympathise, but low could easily become a medium or high, as you just described, everyone, isn't it? So I think as time goes on and there's a few of these, perhaps if somebody's got a bit of time, it doesn't have to be a big piece of work, as you said, for that report. It's a matter of getting it done. I'm just wondering if it is Joy, you know, whether it's something. I was thinking about some of the education team or others that might also be familiar with safeguarding or something, if it is genuinely like a zero return or something. But yeah, the low worried me slightly as time ticks on. I agree with Di there. Any other questions for Myra or Tegrin on this report? There must be. Thank you. Yes, Madeline, and then Vanessa.
Diolch, diolch Myra, as always, and as Di said, really clear report, and I really appreciate the linking, you know, the extraction of the what we need to do and the commentary that you've explained. I also pulled out the we look for the reds, don't we? So that's why you would. The safeguarding issue, I think, as you say, it's the reporting that is the issue, not the actual safeguarding activity. So that's the reassurance. I was less convinced actually that the staff wellbeing, which is clearly a real issue for all of us, that's a policy update which is required, but then it seems to be that we're talking about more champions and so on, or defining roles, and I think there I do want to just push a bit and ensure that that area is really one that we focus on. I fully appreciate that our HR team are running a lot of different areas at the moment that they need to complete, but we did have an identification in the commentary that there was a meeting very recently that will take this work forward, which is great. But I do just want to highlight that obviously staff wellbeing is such an important issue for all members, so we're just keen to always see that continuing, rather work in that area continuing, and always a bit concerned when things are slightly behind. It's only slightly behind, but it was just that point.
Thanks, Matt. What page is that on? First look at it.
It's page. I've just whizzed down it, having made my comment. Yes, it's page 88.
Right, thank you.
Of our papers. It's a medium priority, and it's just slightly behind at the moment. But
policy be updated. The policy. Exactly. I was trying to check the exact wording.
But it felt more that it was not just the policy. It was some actions, you know, deliverable actions within that policy that might also be a bit behind, and that's where I was a bit concerned. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Thanks for that. I'll jump to Tegrin straight away on that one then, because I can see the commentary box has gone off wider, which is good, but I can see what Madeline's saying. Do you want to come in on that one, please?
Yeah, I entirely agree with your comment about the importance of this. I sense this is one of the areas where our actions far outweigh our written policy there, and sometimes you can sort of, oh, we've got a policy in place and not a lot happens there. So where Joy's actually done quite positive work. You know, we had the Wellbeing Day there, and certainly a lot of support is provided on an individual basis as needed. But yeah, take on board. I think there was a meeting of our staff reps group where Joy last week, where Joy had hoped that they would become the wellbeing champions, but I think there was a bit of pushback on them. So I think it might have created a slightly need to approach it in a different way of identifying other ones there. But yeah, it's there. But I know we need the documentation, but I think a lot of things are happening in this field as well.
Thank you. Is that all right, Madeline? Yeah, okay. Vanessa, did you have a comment on the wellbeing one? Okay, so just going to sum up there. When I look at the note there, this might be one, is it, that's expanding in its action? So if you look at the original one, it's the employee health and wellbeing policy be updated. But the commentary on the right-hand side is around reps, champions, wider cultural work, leadership group, loads of fabulous stuff going on, as Tegrin said. But I wonder, it's not actually answering the point. It might be because it's showing loads of other things have been done, but not the policy updating. So I'm just wondering if we could take an action to clear that up, if you know what I mean, to make sure we get an answer to the actual action that's there, or what were the original nub of the internal audit concern, just so we don't drift totally. Just bearing in mind sometimes to be a bit pragmatic and make sure we nail the action we're meant to be nailing, or closing it. We might have actually done what we need to do, I don't know. So perhaps can we have a little look at that one, deep dive into it, see what the original concern was and make sure we're remaining on track, or perhaps get a date for when that might be then, so we don't keep chasing. It's because one I think members would tend to ask every time about otherwise, which is quite right. So yeah, a bit of a dive into that might be really helpful, so we get to the nub of that one. Because as we can see, Joy and team are doing loads in this area, and we're asking about everything else bar the action, I think. Tegrin, did you want to come back on that one? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say two things very quickly. One, we're currently doing work and wellbeing reviews with all our staff, so it should be quite interesting what comes out. And the first question asked there is, how is your well-being and what can be done to improve that? So we'll have that. I do have slight concerns about the fact that items end up in more than one committee there, and there seems to be a bit of a grey area with HR or the new people group and things. But it did almost strike me whether you might want to refer this one to that group.
Exactly, that's what
and get a feedback back to if there might be more time and more.
You're right.
In that
fairness, that's why I'm trying to say it. Our business here, if you like, is what the audit recommendation was, isn't it? So we just want to stick to the brief of that without sounding too narrow as well or siloed. But yeah, our business should be, what was the audit concern? What was that around a policy? And then depending on what Myra tells us and we find, we can go from there. But the general well-being items should always be on a HR committee, shouldn't they? Or, you know, as Di and I meet you as well, Tegrin, those performance meetings, you know, in the appropriate arenas, but it doesn't feel like audit and corporate review committee for the wider well-being. So yes, it's drifting a bit this particular item, isn't it? So we need to get back on track with what exactly the audit recommendation was. Good, thanks for getting to the bottom of that one. And thank you, Vanessa. You've had your hand up for ages. We've got a new point, new question. Over to you.
Thank you, Rachel. It's no problem. As you say, I was just reading, as you say, through the report, and the bit that struck me was the transporting of cash to the bank. And I just wondered, was there a risk element there? I couldn't quite get how that was actually taking place. So it's just a question really there on the safety aspect, because it sounded to me like the transporting, although it isn't, as you say, raised massively, but I was just wondering how that takes place. It sounded quite, as you say, to be transporting cash to a bank these days when there are other ways. So it was just a question around that really, and whether I should be asking on this.
Yeah, internal auditors, the previous internal auditors raised this, yes, and like Mike said, that this action went adrift a little bit, didn't it? Do you want to come in there on the latest, or is Tegrin going to come in?
To be honest, I see the banker coming out to you there, Vanessa. There.
Right.
I'm not sure I've got an answer for this one. I think in some ways, obviously we've always had an issue with transferring cash to a bank as different organisations have. I think in one sense that this has become far less of an issue because few of the transactions actually happen as cash, and I'm not sure in how many places we've actually genuinely have cash. The negative side of that is the closure of banks in rural areas, which make it much harder to find locations to take it. And if I'm honest, to give you a proper answer, I'll have to ask somebody closer to the centres on that one rather than me fudging it there. But I don't consider it's a massive issue. It's certainly an inconvenience with the closure of branches, and particularly when you're in somewhere like St David's, where I think that all the banks have closed there, and I know the post office provides a service there, but you've got nowhere near there, so that regular one. But if we come back and give you a proper answer to that one, they'll do it online.
Okay, Vanessa, you have to hold on a second. Di wants to come in, I think.
Yeah, I'm just mindful of a conversation we had actually in a meeting not very long ago about relating some risks and things, and I'm just wondering whether we ought to be discussing the transfer of cash publicly anyway. That ought to be done privately, in my view, but just putting that little warning out there.
Yeah, you read my mind actually, because I thought this is a risk. You were right, Vanessa, in your original wording of the question, and it came into my mind. It's one that's worth discussing on the risk register, so I think we'll take it as part of that anyway, which makes sense today. It's up to date, so hold on to that thought, Vanessa. Make sure I raise that again under the risk register.
That's why I said at the end I'm not sure if I should be asking this here as opposed, that was the reason why.
It's the right place to, that's absolutely fine. If we don't mention things at all, we're going to forget. So it's a good question. I think it is one that's lingered on. If you don't mind, Maya, as a chair, bit of prerogative, there's something here as well in this one. You mentioned it in your opening as well, isn't it? It's one that it went into a new safe, other things happened, but it's just keeping an eye on that we do address that internal audit recommendation sooner rather than later about their concerns, and we can pick it up again under the risk register one. But there's something there of making sure that mitigations and mediations are taken forward in a timely manner. So hopefully that's sufficient for you for a minute, Maya, just to hold the thought of an action. We might come back on it. Okay, thanks Vanessa for raising that. It's a really important one. Anything else on this internal external audit action log? Very sorry, I had one as chair. It was the health and safety one. Just want to raise that one with you, Maya and Tegrin. It's the bottom of page 72, because it's the health and safety surveillance arrangements, that ongoing monitoring, and it was one of the HSC recommendations. Now, I know at the time we had it down as a low priority compared to a lot of the other things we had, but I did wonder now, it's on not started, on hold, on an amber. So just wanted to ask for an update on that one. Bottom of 72, health surveillance arrangements should be reviewed. I say I'm just holding on to it because it was a HSC recommendation. Don't want to lose that one.
Yeah, I think probably what's happened partly with this, and I think this is part of our perhaps working internally and ensuring that everybody is aware and action has been assigned to them, because this one falls out of the scope of the Health and Safety Project Officer and falls into the scope of the HR team. So I think what we need to do is regroup with the HR team and make sure they're clear of what that action is in terms of it, so that we can progress it. So I think that is kind of a learning on our part as well, about sometimes officers may be providing reports and they've given a recommendation for somebody else to do, and perhaps full awareness isn't there. So I think we've got a bit of work to do internally of just and I think perhaps because we've had changes in officers for HR, that might reflect actually through a number of those recommendations and perhaps the responses, that we just need to clarify perhaps with the team what are the required actions, why, and perhaps even we could maybe meet with internal audit to discuss, are they still appropriate in the current kind of aspect? Things have moved on. Are they still needed? Have things moved on? So I'll follow that one up with HR in terms of it, and then make sure that we've got some sort of plan in place of how to progress it.
Thanks, Maya. Thanks for volunteering action there, but just to chase that one, make sure they've got the action and we're getting the responses we need on that one. And I think the follow-up with Nigel regularly, just to refresh these, is always handy anyway. I think you're going to do that as part of your processes, so I won't put an action in on that one, but a follow-up is key. A regular review, even if it's annual, to tidy these up is key, isn't it? That's fine. Thank you very much. And I think your wider point's a sensible one, that every time new or internal or external audit recommendations are agreed and you've put them on the system, that the right owner is assigned and notified, isn't it? Yeah, it's good actions etiquette, isn't it? Not put somebody else's name down and not tell them about it. So yeah, if you could make sure they're doing that, that would be great for the longer term. Right? Great. Okay, so I think that's it then for that piece. That report is proving to be very, very useful, this new log for audit. Great. Thank you very much, Maya. Okay, are we ready to move on to the next item then? Let's try and do this one and then we'll probably have a break then. So 1424 is the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Quarterly Report. And Tegrin, you've kindly taken this one because Arvon is on leave, isn't he?
He's actually doing a training course, to be honest. Yeah. So, which I think was a multi-day course, which meant he couldn't drop out of it there. So anyway, he's prepared the report. I think, as has been mentioned previously, the report slightly reflects some of the changes you've requested there. So hopefully there are areas there. In view of the safeguarding comment, I note also we're trying to do the health and safety report as well, which is another one which has slipped off the radar in the last couple of years. So hopefully we'll have that in the near future. I've got nothing particularly to say about the report. You'll note also the survey. So we've done a survey there. It was quite an interesting survey in one sense there. So I suppose the intention is to do that on an annual basis. So sometimes when you do it, this is the baseline. It's yes, you can compare with other what's the benchmarking data there, but you know, I suppose it's more useful how we change the dial on a few of those things. I did find it quite interesting that a survey of staff have highlighted that one of the areas we are weakest at is the reporting of incidents, which I would have expected to largely come across the organisation. So I think there's an interesting question there for us and try and dig deeper. You know, some of them are positive, although sometimes I see 80% positive. Is still some of them I question, why do 20% think don't agree with that really? So but happy to take any questions on any of those, or if I can't, I'll have to refer to somebody else.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Thank you very much. Di's got a question.
Yeah, thanks. Just looking at the incidents and accidents reported in 2024, and obviously we've got the 2 there of abuse, which is very unfortunate. And I know it's not a physical injury, we've got none as a physical injury, but I mean, I suppose it depends on the nature of the abuse and how you know, it can be quite, what's the word? You know, you can think about that for several days after, can't you? And possibly weeks or months even, and just wonder how much of an impact, if at all, you know, does anybody go back to them afterwards and say, you know, are you okay? And has it impacted? Does it impact their work, or does it have other impacts on themselves? So just wondering if there's any way of sort of quantifying that, because it just, oh yeah, you've got shouted at, oh well, that's fine, it's a near miss, nothing, but to what extent does it impact them? Thank you.
Thank you. You're on move then.
Sorry. In this case, yes, we've had a few conversations about this one. I think, well, one, a real positive that they were reported, because we tend to not have anybody reporting. Therefore, the fact that we do have somebody reporting, I think it was reporting largely because it happened twice within a reasonably short period of time, and you know, it's there are aggressive drivers around there. You know, the report states that there certainly wasn't a belief that there was a driver error that generated the response there, but so it's quite interesting. I think it's quite positive. As somebody will have to drive tomorrow to North Wales in a car with the Pembrokeshire Coast on it, there, I tend to think that's a good positive. This is one side which we have not really come across before. There, but yeah, you're right to say, you know, the impact of any abuse can be fairly significant on individuals there. So and hence why by reporting this, we can follow through with individuals, both in terms of getting to the bottom of incidents, but also, you know, that well-being issue as well.
Thank you. Is that right, Di?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't aware that it was a driving incident, but you know, if I think, wasn't it during COVID? I think some staff experienced some not particularly nice comments and abuse, and I'm just thinking, you know, how if they suffer from it, and we're all different as well, aren't we? We all have different sensitivities towards that sort of thing. So just wondering how we were keeping an eye on it, but it sounds like you are, so that's good. Thank you.
Thanks. These two were related to people who were out in branded livery, wasn't it? Which was interesting. Because we can be in remote areas, Tegrin, at times. I was wondering, there are some, obviously, if you were back to that cash in vans, if you were actually taking cash to banks, as those big companies do, or prisoners in vans, they've got set vehicles, haven't they, with alarms and things on. It's probably not something we've ever had to do, isn't it? But yeah, it's one to watch for the future in case we need to equip people when they're out in cars, isn't it? Sarah, yes, what's your view?
Yeah, just to say, we do have one unbranded pool car, so it is something to consider, and I have flagged to Jess that when we look at the fleet in future, we do need to think carefully about this, because particularly for planning enforcement visits, for example, sometimes you don't want to turn up in a branded car. So yeah, we do, line managers do chase up with people who have had a negative experience and do keep an eye, so that is something that does happen.
Yeah. Yes, one of interest to watch and think about. I'm thinking about various things. The police, they have often a mark or a number on the top of the vehicle, don't they, for incidents? And so it's something perhaps we can think about for future, sadly, but what it is perhaps we need to be alert to. But I was also interested, and it said near miss on those two with abuse. I'm just thinking, does it work? Because there's more of a mental side of the injury, or the impact personally to it. So, you know, luckily there was no physical injury. They put none in the box, but perhaps that should say physical injury. But there is something about general abuse. We've had them in the past in the shops and things, isn't it? Out of the park and things. It can really have an impact on people, really lose confidence, etc. And I know you're following it up, so it's not a problem. It's just the fact that it says none and near miss in these particular boxes isn't probably accurate for a non-physical abuse type thing. But I'm sure Arfon will improve this as time goes on. There's no problem. Any other questions for Tegrin on this report? We're all reasonably happy. It's looking good. I like the dates on it. Tegrin, he's added that. It wasn't so much a start and an end date. That's the only thing, is there aren't any actions again. The table is great, but it's whether what action is being taken as a result of something is less clear. I don't think there's any riddors this time, so I think that's fine, but it's not actually saying 0 riddors, so you never actually quite know. It's probably one that we just... It does say no riddors, tiny end of the table. Yeah, so it's making sure that those are clear. It's the actions and the follow-up that's important for us to see, isn't it? Like Di's question was asking, what are we doing as a result of the table? So if you could feed that back, that's all. That's great. Okay, members, I think that we've sufficiently noted that report and Tegrin's answer questions. I think it might be timely for a break. Do you want 5-10 minutes? How do you want to play it? 5 enough? Okay, then back at 11:30, please. We'll just pause the live stream now. Thank you.
Rachel,
Yeah.
I'll leave the meeting now if it's okay.
Oh,
Unless there's
yeah,
any
no
other
problem.
particular elements you want me to stay for, then
Not at all. You know, that's great. You've seen some of the ones that are more important and relevant, especially that audit log. So I'm glad you stayed for that. It's useful.
yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Nigel. See you next time.
Yeah,
Nice.
will do. Nice to see you.
Bye bye.
Cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Okay, welcome back everybody. Hi Steve. We're just broken for our break, so that's good timing. Excellent.
Yes, I thought that was, I just logged in and I realised everybody was on a break.
Ideal.
I managed to catch up. Thank you.
Brilliant. So we're just going into that report of the head of nature recovery, bottom of that first page. 1524 is the next one. We're on track. Okay, it's gone past now, everybody. If you can make your way back. Great. Thank you very much. And welcome, Michelle.
Morning,
Oh.
bore da.
Bore da, good morning. Caroline, are we okay from the IT point of view to resume?
Yes, Chair, we are.
Lovely. Thank you very much then. Okay, welcome back everybody. We're now on item 1524 and Michelle Webber has joined us to take us through this item then on the hand-arm vibration syndrome update report. Been looking forward for this update. So thanks Michelle for coming along to let us know how it's all going. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Diolch. Bore da. Good morning, everyone. I won't say too much as all the information is in the report, which you've all seen. And you'll recall the previous updates that I've given last July and November and recognise that a significant amount of work has been undertaken to improve the authority's management of hand-arm vibration. Okay, so the action plan, which was developed last year, that's now all been completed, all those actions. And essentially, the authority's approach to halves is now embedded within our operational processes. And there are some key areas of note since the last report. And so I thought I'd just run through those very briefly now. Key areas that have been achieved since last time then. So all of the testing, and there's information available for all of the summer and the winter equipment now, which is brilliant. We've had some more investment in new equipment. More recently, I mean, you've heard about this previously, but there's some more recent purchases in relation to electric machines, which have a lower vibration. So that's really positive outcomes for our staff. We're in the process of currently of decommissioning some kit, and that includes some areas of kit that have some, higher vibration levels. However, it's worth noting that, all of the kit we buy is always top notch. It's always the best kit for our employees. It is just of utmost importance in that regard. We've also still got an ongoing review and replacement of kit as necessary. It's something that is under continual review, so that will be ongoing. We've had much comprehensive training in terms of halves for the teams over the past year, and there'll be refresher training that will take place regularly as well for the teams. And just to note as well, in terms of doing the vibration testing ourselves, there are going to be some additional staff who are going to be doing that training quite soon, actually, just to give us a bit more resilience. So there's more people who can test that equipment, which will help us as an organisation then. And we'll be continuing with ongoing monitoring and compliance in line with what's been set up. And just to note that we've done an end of the season audit, so the end of the winter season, in terms of halves points for our employees, and there's been no exceedances at all, which is really good news. And we're currently looking at options going forwards now in terms of monitoring of halves and how we do that as an organisation. There's lots of different options available, and perhaps we might have more information at a later committee potentially on this. We'll certainly update members separately about that. So just in summary then, halves will continue to be monitored and considered as part of our operational delivery, and the equipment will be reviewed. And we did have an internal working group which was set up looking at procurement, which is a really interesting approach with people from across the different teams within the warden teams, and we're going to continue with that sort of setup, and that'll be looking at the review of equipment going forward as well as required. And in terms of the reporting, as I said, that this is now mainstreamed within our wider corporate approach to managing health and safety. So that's really good news as well. In terms of next steps then, we've got quite a lot of data now in terms of vibration figures, and part of the next process now is to look at this in more detail, and that will help inform some mapping and planning of the team's work in the future. I mean, the scope of that was quite large in the end. It was not really going to be achievable to get it to this committee, but that is something that we will be working on over the next year. So yeah, lastly, I'd like to just extend my thanks again to the team, as we have done throughout this process, for all their hard work this past year, and also now as we approach this year's cutting season, which seems to have come around really quickly, to be honest. Many thanks. Diolch. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Lovely, thank you, Michelle. And it's good to have an update. I know you've given us past updates, but even your new ones, there are new things coming up all the time. So it's something we find really useful to be kept up to date on, to be honest, with the latest. So good to hear about the latest kit that's been bought and the investment and the training, because I think those were two areas we were talking about last time. What would we be doing? What new tools, etc. And the training uptake was the two things I took away from last time. So thank you for the updates on that. Mike's got a question for you.
More of a comment than a question, please.
No problem. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, Michelle, she thanked a lot of people, but thank you for getting this report together. And really, you know, you're the one that keeps the team together to get this information. So, diolch yn fawr I chi. Thank you very much.
Nice. Thank you there, Michelle, and endorsed by all of us. It's got to be given by somebody, isn't it? And that we recognise that to get it done. So
it's all the team, honestly. It really is.
Yeah, take the praise too. Take it as well. Yeah, no, thank you, Michelle. Any other questions or queries for Michelle? No. Couple from me, Michelle. I was just going to ask, have we heard anything from HSC themselves? Are they going to follow up? Where are they in the process of things? Just wondered if we heard anything there. The second question I had was, James bought a paper, I believe. It might not have been yourself, so I don't know if it's unfair or not, but the changing of the cutting and cutting back on it, especially off the main path, isn't it, was one of the things we had to do in order to keep the figures down, which is right. But any comments you've had on the findings of that and what does that mean would be interesting. As you said, now we're going into the season again, that high season. If we learned anything from last year there would be useful to know. And then the third one, your what's the word, your feeling then of general ownership and culture now across the business, that yes, you're driving it, but is everybody helping you with that, the wider management and leadership across the business, because it's got to be everybody, isn't it? So yeah, those are my three questions, please.
That's great. Thank you, Chair. Okay, on the first point then, in terms of HSE, we haven't had any feedback from them yet. It's probably unlikely. I mean, there is the option that they may do an unannounced visit, so that is still possible.
Okay.
And I'm fully confident in, you know, everything that's been set up, and we've got every single measure in place to deal with that, and we would welcome them.
Yes, anytime. Yeah. You're ready.
On the second point, in terms of the cutting, I mean, partly last year we did have some issues around employing seasonal staff, so that, you know, in terms of responding to that, as well as the HSE improvement notice. I mean, as we've reported before, there wasn't really a significant impact and all of the work was able to be carried out. One of the areas that we monitor is just in terms of complaints, and, you know, there haven't been any more complaints than we would ordinarily expect. We'll wait and see this year. We're very much at the behest of the weather, so we're sort of waiting with bated breath really to see how this season unfolds, shall we say. So yeah, we'll keep you updated anyway with that. In terms of embedding within the culture then, I think it's fair to say it was, you know, last year was a challenging year in some ways, but actually it was a really good opportunity. You know, the team has come together. I would say that, you know, they know what's expected of them now, and, you know, we've always kept our staff safe, so it isn't, you know, a new process for our staff by any means. And it is just part of the routine now. We are looking at different options in terms of monitoring halves, but there'll be more information on that, I think, going forwards. But I suppose one of the interesting things was we've got 3 area teams currently, and we have for a while. And there was, you know, one of the teams moved to work in the other areas to kind of respond. And I think there might be more of that this summer as well. So that was a slightly different way of working and being able to target, you know, brush cutters and trimming and cutting to where we need it. So I'm confident again that, you know, this season will be a success. Famous last words now, but
great. Yeah, flexibility is key. And you say the season, you put it in your paper, haven't you? It might need different equipment at different times. It's all over the place, isn't it? Yeah, who knows? So yeah, flexibility is going to be required. Thanks, Michelle. I think Di's got a question next.
Yeah, she was just to say to Michelle, isn't it lovely to hear a positive out of a negative?
Yes.
So yeah, many congratulations, well done.
Yeah, brilliant.
Diolch. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the way to take these challenges, isn't it, and learn, and we've done that, and your confidence is great. That quiet confidence is great, and we look forward to a report from HSE that's positive in future, isn't it? Yeah. Mike, did you want to come back? Go on, Mike.
Oh, diolch yn fawr i chi. Thank you. We have a very strong footpaths group in St Ogwells, and they do a lot of good work with the help of the national parks, especially at Poppit. I'd just like to thank the national park for giving our local organisation as much help as they can, because it gives them confidence that when they are out together as a group, that if anything, that they can do, the national park are quite prepared to step in and give us some help. So I just wanted to say that, because I hope there are other organisations within the authority land that also help the national park in different ways. But anyway, thank you. Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd.
Yeah, diolch, Mike. All hands to the pumps, as I say, isn't it? Volunteers as well, partners. Yeah, that's right. Okay, Michelle, have you got any other last words or comments or any asks of us?
No, that's all. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. And we look forward to another update again shortly when you've got some things to say after the season, I think, and how it's gone, and just keeping an eye on it would be great. And obviously if HSC come along, we'd be interested to see the report they give us. So thanks very much, Michelle, for a comprehensive report on all your work during the year. If you can convey thanks back to everybody for being on this, that'd be
Will
much
do.
appreciated.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, members. So we're on to the next item, which is 1624. So this is a report from Mair on Wellbeing Objectives Performance Report. Okay, Mair, are you ready for this one?
Diolch, Cadeirydd. So this performance report sets out the authority's performance against its 4 wellbeing objectives set out in our Corporate and Resources Plan 2023-24 to 2026-27. It outlines progress against priority indicators, projects, work programmes and internal development activities identified in the authority's delivery plans. For this committee, it seeks to help provide assurance that the authority is making progress against its wellbeing objectives and priorities, while also highlighting risk areas in terms of where there may be challenges for delivery or limited progress. The introduction report provides a summary of key developments across our wellbeing objectives, and I'll just note a number of key highlights. So in terms of conservation, the Connecting the Coast scheme is having a positive impact, with the majority of management agreements drawn up and signed by grant recipients. 39 sites are covered by the scheme based on grant offers, 17 sites are receiving capital only grants, and 22 sites are signed into 5-year management agreements. 23 of these sites are commercial farms. In addition to direct benefits for biodiversity, the capital grants have also provided a positive engagement tool for introducing conservation approaches to farmers, landowners the authority has previously had limited engagement with. Please note there's a typo on page 127, and it should read number of trees, not meters, in that section in terms of capital grants for field trees and woodland planting. Wet weather did impact our conservation activities in Q4, and weather storms are likely to have impacted on the increase in public rights of way concerns due to impact on surface conditions, with the inland rights of way affected by storm damage bringing down a number of trees, and that kind of reflected through to the countryside management team's cutting and maintenance work programme that kind of saw 28 tasks completed in that area over Q4. In terms of funding, the Pathways, our supported volunteering project, has received HLF Nature Network funding for part of it, and that will see them take part in a range of conservation management projects across the north of the county over the next 2 years, with a particular focus on invasive species. And I think this highlights the important role our volunteering and inclusion work and nature recovery work can play together in terms of us achieving our wellbeing objectives. Funding has also been secured for the first 1,000 day project for 2024-25, which will focus on a programme of activity with parents and preschool children in Hampford so that's positive news. And the Lost Words exhibition has had a positive impact on Oriel Park Gallery figures. Visitors numbers with a 12.6% increase on 2022-23. In terms of areas noted as amber, please note all sites have now provided a waste management strategy compliant with the new waste separation requirements recorded on a centrally held spreadsheet. So they did do that by the date of the new legislation coming in. And the decarbonisation team engaged with staff over Q4 in terms of these changes. So we were proactive in terms of kind of highlighting it, and that's linking in and supporting our wider work around decarbonisation and waste in terms of it. The climate change risk assessment and resilience plan is in amber and behind schedule, and the Carew Castle access project remains in amber and is still in the initial planning stage. The authority has been carrying out recruitment activity for new Get Outdoor coordinators, so that's the formerly walkability and beach wheelchair roles. A south position was filled, but they are still looking to recruit a Welsh speaker for the north of the county post. Members are requested to receive and comment on the performance report. If I or officer present cannot answer any questions or you have any queries, I'll get in contact with the relevant officer and get back to you with the information.
Brilliant, thank you, Maya. Lots of good news in there, progress and grants and lots of things. So thank you very much for, well, everybody, huge amount of work going on. Any questions or comments on the report then for Maya, please? Yes, Madeline and then Mike, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Diolch, Maya. Fantastic report, I think. And as you explained, you know, it is the final quarter, but it leads in. We will be getting an annual report within our annual reporting of our wellbeing objectives, so that will bring together the whole year. I found particularly helpful in this the highlight on the carbon emissions and so on. I'm not sure, to my slight embarrassment, whether I've really clocked this on the reporting before, and it's so important for us to not only comment as we have in the land management areas, but actually, you know, give amounts of carbon that we're seeing and potential reductions. I think it focuses the mind so much more clearly, where we can say our activity is having or going to have that impact or has had that impact in terms of carbon. So very, very helpful from that point of view. I think after our carbon literacy training, it's something that I'm particularly aware of that we need to be focusing on for all of our reporting. So having it so clearly stated there, I found very helpful. So Diolch, thank you very much, and congratulations to the whole team. Really, your reporting is always so clear, but obviously everybody has contributed to this across the staff and volunteer team. So diolch yn fawr.
Lovely, thank you, Madeline, for well, the positive comments and also the reminder on that climate one. It's the C of one of our 4 C's of the strategy, but it's key one, that carbon within the climate, isn't it? And it's good to see that we're doing well in that area. It's quite important as parks. Great. Mike and then Dai.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Diolch i di am dy gwaith, Mair. Wastod yn cael gwybodaeth da wrthot ti. Just thanking Mair for her excellent work, and there's always lots and lots of information within her reports. My question, please, is regarding defibrillators. Whether, you know, in special sites within the national park, are there defibs in place? I was down in Poppet Sunday because the Surf Life Saving Club were having their first training session, and of course they, you know, there's a defib there with the RNLI station, so that's covered. I was just wondering whether other you know, important points, every point is important in National Park, but you know, where people gather, whether there are defibs in place. I hope I'm not giving you extra work, Maya.
Interesting question.
I don't have the answer, but I can go and talk to Steve, because I think that's quite an interesting when we're looking at the National Park Management Plan and we're doing work around different things to do with access. So it's a really interesting one that if we don't have that, you know, we can go away and see how we could get that information, because it's quite an important one for people to be aware of in terms of that. So if you're happy to leave that with me, and I'll do a bit of digging to see if I can get the information for you.
Diolchgar iawn I chi, Mair. Thank you very, very much.
Good. Thanks for an interesting question, Mike. And Mike will take an action again to find out for us. Di, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was just going back to Madeleine's point, actually, about the carbon capture. Actually, you know, it's a main plank of our remit letter, isn't it? And if we can provide that evidence to the Minister when we have our regular check-ins, actually that helps us really fight our cause, doesn't it? Because we're actually providing that, you know, baseline data that we are doing what they are asking us to do. So so that's really helpful. I just yeah, I'm always amazed about how you put all this together, and I appreciate there's a huge team behind you that also input into it. But you know, I'm just looking at the graph on the visitor centres. Nice to see that trend gradually increasing, perhaps going back to COVID. But it's so visual, it's easy, and yeah, it's really well presented. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Di, for raising the visitor numbers one. It's worth us noting that, you know, to think about it as well, celebrating that. But it is coming nicely because we've had the benchmark was pre-COVID previously, wasn't it? So this shows now we get back on track. Dare I use the word normal, but it is coming, getting there, whatever that is. Yeah, so that graph shows that, and that's really positive. So it's up from here, I hope. That's great. So visitor numbers in all the settings. It's great. Good for income and good for accessibility. It shows that people are visiting. Fabulous. And the carbon one to note, I think, and celebrate that. And perhaps not wanting to be too soon and shooting from the hip, Tegrin, but it's a good story, I was thinking, because we have a lot of bulletins about other work, but this particular C on climate and carbon might be one, even like a dial or something we can show in areas to show how well we are doing, leading the way or whatever. Yeah, with caution, another C, but yeah, I think we ought to do a bit more on that one when the time is right, you know. Let's celebrate it because it's so close to our heart. Any other questions or comments, Amir, on this report? There's so much information. I think the only one I had was Chair, which hasn't come up, is planning, whether somebody wanted to say something on planning performance. Usually one of the members will ask a question on that at some point, but they haven't today, so I better had as Chair. Maib, did you want to come in?
Just to say, it'll be in the next, it's in the assurance report, the planning.
In the compliance, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I can hold on then. I can hold on. Okay, anything else on this particular one then? Okay, thank you, Mair. Well, without further ado then, let's move on to the next report then, if you don't mind. So the next one is 1724, and it's the performance and compliance one. Oh, we've got a chat comment on defib finders. I was thinking that you can have them on maps now, can't you? Tegrin, do you want to mention it? Go on, you just put something in the chat.
Yeah, to us, I just had a quick search, and actually if you put the town name or the postcode in, it'll tell you what's in defibrillators are in the area. I'm sure there are others, but that's one I just happened to find.
Yeah, it's a good, there's a few of these type of things, isn't it? What apps and things like that where you can locate things. It's a good idea. Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, sorry for that aside, but it is nice to know these things. Okay, Maya, do you want to take us into the next one then on the report and the compliance? You say you've moved the audit stuff into that, the planning stuff into this compliance one, and we'll cover it there. Thanks, Maya.
So the aim of this report is for it to act as one element of our risk management approach and support officers and members in monitoring, assessing and responding to compliance and in corporate improvement areas of work. This is the second report of this nature and it still is in development phase with further engagement work to be carried out over the next few months with compliance leads for different areas. The report reviews our current performance across compliance, public and statutory duties and corporate improvement areas, including planning. This includes corporate activities identified in the delivery plans and annual governance statement. It also provides resilience scores for accountability documentation, incidents engagement with regulators, complaints monitoring and culture and implementation. Activities to improve resilience scores include the Corporate Policy Management and Communication Project, and we've got a follow-up report on activities within that. So within the report, you'll see a number of kind of policies where there might not be dates or version of controls. So we have got work in progress to help address that. Following the Ombudsman upholding a complaint, the authority acknowledges that more regular updates need to be provided to complainants in future, and changes made to the authority's complaints procedure in 2023 should help improve processes and management of communication going forward. Collaborative work has commenced between the Head of Finance and Fundraising and Head of Decarbonisation to look at development of a socially responsible procurement strategy alongside review of contract standing order and sustainable procurement policy. So this is in response to UK and Welsh government legislative changes in this area, and this work also provides an opportunity to address some of those recommendations raised around value for money from the internal audit work. A record management group is in place and monitoring, providing problem solving forum progress to progress a range of record management activities, although some of the activities in this area has been impacted by staff capacity. I'd say in terms of planning, please note the management response in terms of planning performance on page 173. We did review planning stats as part of this process to gain further understanding in terms of 8 weeks against those with agreed extensions. Members are requested to receive and comment on the assurance monitoring report. If I or an officer present can't answer your question, I'll go back and talk to a relevant officer to get additional information.
Great, thank you, Mair. This is a useful addition to our pack. This really is showing the compliance across the piece. So thank you, and thank you for the additions you've added in there that we know need to be added in, like the value for money things now in the audit. So it'll be an organic document, won't it? We understand that. Thank you. Okay, opening it up for anybody to ask any questions then, please. Well, I'll ask the plan.